Phantom train. The train with no return ticket.
You missed the last train home. Or maybe it wasn't meant to bring you back. Across the world, from Tokyo to Siberia, from Chicago to the Andes, there are stories of trains that appear in the night. Trains that have no conductor, no destination. Only one thing in common. No one who gets on ever returns the same. These are the phantom trains. And these are the 5 stories that survived. 1. The Kisaragi Station, Japan. It all started with a tweet. A young woman named Hasumi, living in Japan, was like many others, connected to her phone, sharing little moments of her life. On a regular evening in 2004, she boarded her usual train at Shin Hamamatsu Station, on her way home after a long day at work. The train was crowded, as it always was, but as the train rumbled along the tracks, Hasumi noticed something strange. The stops were beginning to feel wrong. The train passed familiar stations, but the usual sights were gone. It was as if the train had been running longer than it should have. It wasn't late. She had checked the time before boarding, but now the seconds stretched on endlessly. The train didn't stop as it usually did. The lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows across the empty seats. A cold chill ran through the air, unusual for a summer evening. The rhythmic hum of the train, the squeal of the tracks, everything felt off. And then, without warning, the train slowed and came to a stop at a platform Hasumi had never seen before. The train doors opened with a hiss, and as she looked out, the platform was empty. No other passengers disembarked. No station staff stood at the usual waiting area. Just a thick, impenetrable fog rolling in from all sides, as if the very air itself were swallowing the world whole. She could barely see the outline of the platform. Her phone screen flickered, barely showing any signal. She checked the map on her phone, but the station wasn't there. No name, no sign, nothing to tell her where she had arrived. She stepped off the train, her shoes clicking softly against the cold concrete. The fog enveloped her, and the silence was oppressive. It was as if even the air had stopped breathing. She took a few steps, her heart beginning to beat faster with a sense of unease she couldn't shake. And then, the first message appeared on her Twitter feed. "I don't know where I am." A moment passed, and she typed again. "My phone GPS says I'm in the mountains, but there are no mountains here." She turned slowly, scanning the foggy platform, her eyes widening. No mountains, just an empty, desolate station. She glanced down the tracks, nothing but darkness and fog in the distance. She felt something cold brush against her skin, and for the first time, the reality of the situation hit her. She wasn't where she was supposed to be. She tried to leave the station, her footsteps echoing through the silence. But as she reached the end of the platform, she realized something horrifying. There were no roads, no way out. There was nothing but dark tunnels leading further into the unknown. In her panic, she messaged again. "I hear footsteps behind me, but I'm alone." Her breath quickened. The fog had thickened around her, making the air feel heavier, suffocating. She spun around, expecting to see someone, anyone. But there was no one in sight. Only the oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of her own breathing, echoing back at her in the strange stillness. And then, another sound. Footsteps, but they weren't her own. They were slow, deliberate. They seemed to be getting closer, coming from behind her. She turned quickly, her heart racing. But the platform remained empty. The fog swirled like it was alive, pressing in around her. "Who's there?" she messaged frantically. No answer. Her phone screen blinked once, twice. It was losing signal. Hasumi's breath came faster now. She began walking toward one of the dark tunnels, desperate to find any exit, any sign of life. But the further she walked, the more oppressive the silence became. The footsteps behind her didn't stop. They matched her pace. Step by step, as though something, someone, was walking just behind her, staying out of sight. In her panic, she messaged again. "I can't find the exit. The walls feel like they're closing in." The words on the screen flickered one last time before going dark. That was the last anyone heard from Hasumi. Her phone, still connected to the station's eerie signal, fell silent. When her friends and family tried to reach her, all they got was static, an unsettling white noise, as if the signal had been swallowed by the very station she was trapped in. Days passed, then weeks, but there was no sign of Hasumi. The police launched a search, but there was no trace of her anywhere. The train station had never existed on any official map, and there were no records of Kisaragi Station in any railway system database. But that's when things began to take a darker turn. Since that night, there have been numerous reports of other commuters, some on trains, some in taxis, who have claimed to have seen Kisaragi Station, only at night when the fog rolls in thick and fast. They report hearing the distant hum of a train, seeing a flash of lights in the fog, and then finding themselves stopped at the same empty station Hasumi had described. In many cases, the station appears out of nowhere, and just as quickly as it came, it disappears, leaving those who encounter it confused, lost, and unsettled. Some passengers who ventured out of their trains found themselves walking the same foggy platform Hasumi had, hearing footsteps behind them, but seeing no one. Others say that the tunnels that line the station's platform lead to nowhere. No matter how long they walk, the path never seems to end. But no one knows what happens to those who get off the train.
Hasumi's story, once a chilling tale of a woman lost to an unexplainable world, has now become a warning to all commuters. Beware the fog that arrives early. Beware the station that no one can find. And if you ever hear footsteps behind you in the fog, don't turn around.
The Metro 2 Tunnel, Russia. Beneath the heart of Moscow lies a secret so deep, so hidden that even today it is yet to be fully acknowledged. An underground line that does not appear on any official map. No one can speak of it openly. But those who have stumbled upon its eerie tracks, those who have dared to investigate, speak of something far more sinister than an ordinary subway system. It is called Metro 2. The existence of Metro 2 is shrouded in mystery. It was allegedly built during the Cold War as a secure underground route for Soviet elites, a hidden escape plan in case of nuclear war, a way for the most powerful men in the Soviet Union to vanish when the world above crumbled into chaos. But unlike Moscow's regular metro system, this one was never declassified. It remained a secret of the government, a whisper among those who knew of its existence but were too afraid to speak. For years, it existed only as a rumor, an urban legend of sorts, passed down among locals. But the whispers grew louder as time passed, especially in the 1990s, when a disturbing series of events unfolded. In the late 1990s, maintenance workers, those tasked with keeping Moscow's public transportation running smoothly, began to report something strange. They spoke of an old Soviet-style train moving silently along tracks that were supposedly abandoned. This train, completely empty, would appear without warning, running in the dead of night, often when the city was at its quietest. There was no schedule, no driver, no one aboard. One worker, a janitor named Yuri, was particularly intrigued by the hum of the train. He had heard it many times in the night, this distant, almost imperceptible sound of an approaching locomotive. It had always sent a shiver down his spine, as he knew the tracks it traveled along were long abandoned. It was a sound that shouldn't exist in the dead of night. Driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, Yuri decided to follow the tracks one evening. He couldn't resist. The hum called to him. It was as if the train itself was beckoning him to uncover the mystery. He made his way through the dark tunnels, walking for hours, until he finally reached an area that seemed to lead nowhere. The tracks stretched forward into a labyrinth of unlit passages, yet Yuri could feel that he was not alone. He could hear the faintest sound of movement in the distance, the faint rattle of metal against metal. And then, it happened. The lights flickered and suddenly, the train appeared. It moved by itself, its wheels screeching along the tracks, although there was no one on board. No sound of doors opening, no shadow of passengers, just the train, moving in eerie silence. Yuri was struck with both awe and terror. He stepped closer, trying to understand what he was witnessing, but the moment he moved toward the train, it vanished, just as quickly as it had appeared, swallowed by the darkness of the tunnel. Confused and shaken, Yuri turned to leave. But as he did, something caught his attention. A shadow, not far off, began to materialize out of the darkness. Figures, human-like, emerged from the tunnel walls, silent, still. Yuri froze. They were tall, too tall to be ordinary people, their features obscured by the dim light. But the most disturbing detail was their eyes, or rather the lack of eyes. Their faces were flat, smooth, devoid of any sign of sight, and they stared directly at him. Panic set in. Yuri turned and ran, but the figures followed, their silent footsteps echoing behind him, growing louder with every step. 3 days passed before Yuri was found. He was discovered in another part of the tunnel, curled up against the wall, trembling. When rescuers approached him, he mumbled incoherently, his voice barely a whisper. They were all still alive, but didn't have eyes. Yuri's condition was severe. His mind appeared broken, his body exhausted. He never spoke about what happened that night. His silence spoke volumes, though. He never returned to work, never spoke to anyone about the event again. The experience had shattered him, and the haunting words he left behind, they were still alive, but didn't have eyes, lingered in the minds of those who had heard them. To this day, no one can confirm the true existence of Metro 2. It has never appeared on any map, and the Soviet government, of course, never acknowledged its construction or purpose. Many theories abound. Some believe it was a military installation, a secretive escape route for the government in times of crisis. Others think it might be a remnant of a forgotten era, a byproduct of Cold War paranoia. But the mystery doesn't end there. Occasionally, surveillance cameras catch glimpses of something moving along the tracks of Metro 2. A shadow, a flicker in the dark that shouldn't be there. Something passing through a tunnel that no one should be able to see. No one can explain it. But those who've dared to investigate the tunnel, often at the risk of their own safety, are left with more questions than answers. What was Yuri chasing that night? Was it just an old ghost train, a remnant of a bygone era? Or was it something else entirely, something far darker, still lingering beneath Moscow? Perhaps the Metro 2 is more than just a secret underground line. Perhaps it's a doorway to something that doesn't belong in our world. And who or what might still be waiting in the shadows? The Silverpilen, Sweden. In Stockholm's vast and intricate subway system, there's one train that doesn't belong. They call it the Silverpilen, the Silver Arrow. A train unlike any other, unpainted with a cold metallic sheen that seems to shimmer in the dim lighting of the station. Its design hails from the 1960s, a relic of an older time with its lights flickering, its passengers long gone. But it appears late at night when the trains are few and the station is quiet. No one knows where it comes from or where it goes. What is known is this: if you board it, you might never come back. For years, passengers have whispered about the Silverpilen in hushed tones, sharing unsettling stories of what happens when the train arrives. Those who have encountered it report strange, surreal experiences. Some say they were riding a regular subway train, only to fall asleep lulled by the rhythmic clatter of the tracks, only to awaken alone in a car that shouldn't exist. There's no one else around, no other passengers, no conductor. just the cold metallic interior, the flickering lights, and the overwhelming sense of being lost. The train moves silently, faster and faster into tunnels that feel unfamiliar, strange. No matter how much you look outside, you see only darkness, a blur of concrete, tunnels stretching endlessly. The train doesn't stop, it doesn't slow down. It hurtles through the night with no indication of where it's headed or why it's moving so fast. Time itself begins to distort. Minutes feel like hours, hours feel like minutes. It's as if the world around you is warping, bending into something unreal. There's a legend that's been passed from one commuter to another, a warning of sorts. If the Silverpilen picks you up, it will take you to Kisaragi station, an abandoned, half-built stop hidden away in the middle of nowhere. The station is eerie, desolate, with no signs of life. It's isolated from the rest of the subway system, a place forgotten by time, yet it remains there, waiting for someone to stumble upon it. And when you arrive, you will see it. The sign above the station, weathered and aged, reading the words that send chills down your spine. Only the dead get off here. Some say that Kisaragi station is where the train goes to die, a place where those who boarded the Silverpilen are forever lost. Others speak of those who have found themselves there, their lives never the same afterward. They report waking up on the train at the break of dawn, trembling, disoriented, and covered in sweat. They tell of the feeling that something or someone is still with them, watching from the shadows. The train has appeared and disappeared countless times over the years, always in the dead of night, always with the same eerie silence. No official records, no mention in any schedules, just the train arriving out of nowhere, picking up passengers who will never speak of what happens next.
The most unsettling part? There are still those who report seeing the Silverpilen, only now it's a shadow in the distance, something seen but never touched. The train moves silently along the tracks, and those who've had the courage to follow it report hearing faint whispers, like soft voices calling from the shadows of the tunnels. What happens to those who board the Silverpilen? Where does it take them? No one really knows. But every so often, another passenger disappears. Another story emerges of someone who boarded and never returned. It's as though the train moves between worlds, a world we can't see, can't understand. A world where time stretches and warps, where the living and the dead are separated by nothing more than the cold steel of an old train car. So, the next time you find yourself waiting for a late-night train in Stockholm, be careful which car you choose, because if you fall asleep and the Silverpilen finds you, you might just be taken to Kisaragi station, where the only way out is through the gates of the dead. The ghost train of Lincolnshire, England. In the desolate windswept fields of Lincolnshire, England, there's a legend that haunts the countryside. Every year on March 24th, at precisely 3:45 a.m., a train rushes down a long-abandoned track, its destination unknown. But this isn't just any train. There's no engine, no driver to be seen, only the deafening roar of metal grinding against metal, echoing through the night. A silhouette emerges from the mist, a Victorian-era train, glowing faintly under the pale light of the moon. Its shape is distant, shadowy, but unmistakable. Locals have long whispered about this eerie sight. They say it's the Lost Express of 1862, the train that vanished on its way to London with 43 passengers aboard. It was a journey that was never completed, a mystery that has remained unsolved for over a century. The train, they say, disappeared without a trace, swallowed up by time and the unforgiving countryside. No wreckage, no sign of those on board, just the echoes of their last moments, fading into the past. But once a year, the ghost train returns. Each year, on that same fateful night, when the clock strikes 3:45 a.m., you can hear it, a distant rumble, the shriek of old wheels turning, cutting through the stillness of the dark fields.
The train comes out of nowhere, speeding down the tracks that haven't been used for over 100 years. Some say they can feel the ground tremble under their feet as the train rushes past, like the earth itself is remembering its tragic history. The eerie thing is, if you see it, you might hear something else, a sound carried on the wind. Voices. Soft at first, like whispers, but growing louder with every passing second. Pleading voices, desperate and broken, crying out to be let off the train. But no doors open. The train continues its relentless course, gliding through the night with no one able to escape. The faces of those passengers remain hidden, their pleas unheard. They are trapped, forever bound to this night, doomed to circle the countryside every March 24th. For those 43 souls, time has become an endless loop, locked in a nightmare they can never escape. If you're unlucky enough to be near the tracks when it arrives, you might catch a glimpse of the spectral train, glowing faintly in the moonlight, rushing past with a sound that rattles your bones. But don't be fooled by its haunting call. The train doesn't stop. It never stops. And the worst part, the voices. The voices you hear, they aren't just from the past. There are whispers of people foolish enough to chase the train, to follow its ghostly trail, who were never seen again. Lost to the same fate as those passengers from 1862, swallowed by the night, vanishing without a trace, just like the train itself. Some say they can still hear the voices if they listen closely enough, calling from the fields, calling from the tracks, warning those who might be curious enough to follow. But if you're wise, you won't. Because once you follow the sound, once you step too close to the train's path, you might just join the ranks of those who never returned. For the ghost train of Lincolnshire doesn't just take the souls it carries, it takes the living too. So, if you find yourself near the tracks at 3:45 a.m. on March 24th, remember this: do not follow the sound. And most importantly, do not board the train.
5. The last train, Chicago.
It was just another late shift. Mark, a janitor at a downtown building in Chicago, had finished cleaning up and was ready to head home. The night was dark, and the rain fell in sheets, drumming against the windows of the empty office building. He sighed as he walked to the train station, looking forward to the quiet ride back to the suburbs. He boarded the last Blue Line train, his usual route. The car was mostly empty, save for 3 others. An old woman sat in the corner, humming an old tune under her breath. A man in a long trench coat stood by the doors, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of his hat. But the one that caught Mark's attention was the boy. The boy sat across from Mark, staring directly at him. He didn't blink. His eyes were wide, unblinking, locked onto Mark's gaze in a way that made him uneasy. Mark tried to shake the feeling, glancing away, but he could still feel those eyes on him, like they were burning into his soul. The train lurched forward, and they passed by empty stations. Mark glanced at the clock, his mind starting to drift. It had been a long night, but as they neared the next stop, something strange happened. The lights above flickered, then dimmed. Mark felt a chill run through him. The usual hum of the train quieted, replaced by an unnatural silence that made the air feel thick. It was as if the world had paused for a moment, holding its breath. And then, when the lights returned, Mark's stomach dropped. He was alone. The old woman was gone. The man in the trench coat had disappeared. The boy who had been staring at him so intently was gone too. The train car was empty, save for Mark. He stood up quickly, looking out the window. But the familiar sights of the city were gone. Instead, all he saw was darkness. The tracks, the buildings, the distant lights of the city, nothing. He stumbled to the front of the car, trying to shake off the feeling of panic that was building inside him. As he moved through the train, he saw the station signs shift and change. The names of the stops were now foreign to him, unfamiliar. He felt like he was trapped in a dream. No, something worse than a dream. And then, the speaker crackled to life, its voice static and distorted. The words that followed sent a chill down Mark's spine. Final destination reached. Mark's heart raced. He couldn't breathe. He darted from one car to the next, his footsteps echoing through the silence. Each car was identical, empty, cold, and still. The old woman was back, humming her haunting tune. The man in the trench coat stood by the door, his head tilted slightly as if watching Mark. The boy who wouldn't blink, was sitting across from him again, his eyes locked onto Mark's in that same unnerving gaze.
It was as if everything had restarted, the same people, the same empty train, the same unsettling stillness. Mark's pulse quickened, his mind racing. He ran through the train again, desperately trying to find a way out, but the cars never changed. The same figures, the same silence, the same sense of wrongness. With a cry of panic, Mark stumbled to the doors, but they refused to open. His hands grasped the cold metal handles, but nothing would give. The train lurched again, but this time the movement felt different, slower, almost as if it was floating in a void, moving nowhere. Suddenly, everything went dark. Mark woke up in his bed, gasping for air, drenched in cold sweat. His heart raced and his body trembled as he sat up, trying to understand what had happened. The storm outside still raged, the rain tapping against his window in the same rhythm as before. He rubbed his eyes, his breath shallow. It was just a dream, that's all it was. But something didn't feel right. His shoes were still wet. He glanced down at them, puzzled. The cold dampness of the fabric sent a shiver up his spine. Mark slowly stood up, feeling his legs shake beneath him. His eyes drifted to his bedside table, and there, lying innocently on top, was the train ticket. The ticket he didn't remember bringing home. He picked it up, his fingers trembling as he turned it over. Stamped on the ticket in bold, dark letters were the words, "No return." A chill swept through him, colder than the rain outside. Mark dropped the ticket, his breath caught in his throat. He rushed to the window, flinging open the curtains to look out at the stormy night, but the world beyond was just as it should be. The train, the station, the voices, it had all felt so real. But this wasn't. Or was it? He glanced back at the ticket on his table, still stamped with the words that would haunt him forever. No return. Conclusion. The Phantom Train is not just a fictional tale. It reflects things we cannot easily explain, a connection between the mind and the unseen worlds. From a scientific perspective, this could be a result of the mind playing tricks in extreme states, such as fatigue, stress, or even prolonged sleep deprivation. The train may represent a liminal state, where the mind can no longer clearly distinguish between dreams and reality. However, from a spiritual point of view, this train could symbolize the act of fleeing, the souls that are lost and unable to return. The passengers, perhaps those who have given up on life, are searching for a new path, one from which they will never return. How can we know when we are standing at the final crossroads of life? That is the question this phantom train leaves each of us to ponder. So, are you ready to board that one-way train with no return ticket? Remember, every escape may lead you to a world you never wish to come back from. The world is not always what it seems. If you're ready to keep peeling back the shadows, like, share, and subscribe this video. The truth is just beginning to unfold.